They say clarity builds trust. That being understood is the foundation of intimacy. That transparency is power. But Machiavelli understood something far more enduring, something quietly terrifying to those who seek control. When people think they've figured you out, they stop hesitating. They stop watching. They stop thinking. They begin predicting. And in that moment, you become vulnerable. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see what you appear to be. Few really know what you are." He wasn't just speaking about image, he was speaking about leverage. Because the one who believes they know what you are will assume they know what you'll do. And the one who thinks they know what you'll do begins calculating how to move you, dismiss you, or quietly replace you. To be fully understood is to be defined, and to be defined is to be contained. Power, then, is not simply about strength or charisma or confidence. Power is about remaining unplaceable. It's about becoming the kind of person who resists collapse into a single image, a single role, a single story. It's about leaving just enough uncertainty that others must second-guess their assumptions before they speak, act, or oppose you. This doesn't mean you must become guarded, manipulative, or emotionally distant. It means you must become intentional. You must decide what part of yourself to reveal and what part to withhold, because what others can see, they will try to use. But what they can't see, they begin to respect. When people don't know where you end, they step more carefully around you. When they don't know your full intent, they listen a little closer. And when they can't reduce you, they have no choice but to carry your presence in full, a presence they can't quite prepare for. That is what Machiavelli understood. That respect is not earned through transparency. It is earned through discretion, not because you're hiding something shameful, but because you're protecting something sovereign. You do not owe the world a full rendering of your inner life. You owe yourself the freedom to move unburdened by the weight of their assumptions. Let them think they see you. Let them guess. Let them project. Because the moment they stop being certain about you is the moment they start taking you seriously. The most dangerous threats you'll face in life won't announce themselves. They won't come with red flags or dramatic entrances. They come quietly, disguised as opportunities, alliances, and praise. And most often, they emerge not because you've done something wrong, but because you've become too easy to read. Power invites attention, but predictability invites attack. Machiavelli understood that the most vulnerable position is not weakness, it's visibility without ambiguity. Once people believe they understand you fully, they begin to move differently. They stop listening and start leveraging. They stop observing and start planning. Because the one who appears fully known becomes, in their eyes, fully manageable. In The Prince, Machiavelli repeatedly emphasizes the necessity of appearances, not as deception, but as defense. To survive in a world of shifting loyalties, fragile egos, and unspoken competition, one must control not only what is true, but what is seen to be true, because what others perceive becomes their reality, and their reality becomes your threat. You do not need to be feared to be safe, but you do need to be uncertain. A clearly visible man is a map, and maps are meant to be navigated, predicted, and ultimately conquered. But a man who is only half visible, a man whose motives remain just out of reach, is not approached the same way. He is treated with caution, perhaps even reverence, not because of what he has shown, but because of what he has not. This is the silent edge of power, learning how to shape perception while revealing very little. Let them think they see your strengths. Let them see what you are willing to give. But keep your depth, your true vision, your private loyalties, your long game, obscured beneath the surface. Because if they see all of you too soon, they'll begin planning without you. And the worst moves are always made in the confidence of knowing their opponent. You protect your power not by becoming a ghost, but by becoming a symbol. Something others can observe but never quite define. A presence that demands respect, not because of volume or dominance, but because it resists simplification, because it leaves space for uncertainty, and uncertainty is what keeps threat at bay. When people cannot fully see you, they do not simply wonder about you. They begin to reflect themselves onto you. This is one of the least understood dynamics of human nature and one of the most quietly powerful. In absence of clarity, people project. They fill in the gaps of your story with fragments of their own, their fears, their insecurities, their fantasies, and their unresolved wounds. And without realizing it, they begin responding to their idea of you, not who you actually are. This is not a flaw in perception, it's a pattern. And Machiavelli, though not using modern psychological language, saw this dynamic clearly. He understood that when people encounter mystery, they are forced into a kind of emotional creativity. They invent motivations, they assign depth, they either admire or distrust, but they rarely ignore. This is why mystery multiplies your presence, because people don't just see you, they begin experiencing you, internally, unconsciously, as a kind of mirror. And in that mirror, they often reveal far more about themselves than they ever intended. Someone insecure will perceive your silence as arrogance. Someone manipulative will suspect you're hiding something because they would be. Someone unhealed will call your restraint emotional unavailability because they have never known intimacy without chaos. And yet others, those with depth, will feel pulled toward you. Not because you've said anything profound, but because your quiet invites them into their own. This is where mystery becomes not just protection, but leverage. Because once someone is projecting onto you, they are no longer watching you. They are watching their own shadow dance across your surface. And while they're lost in that illusion, you are free to move, to observe, to learn, to act without resistance. Power, in its most elegant form, is not the ability to force movement. It's the ability to cause stillness, to become the kind of presence that others cannot quite interpret, and therefore must respect. But let me be clear, this is not manipulation in the shallow sense. You are not inventing a mask to deceive. You are withholding conclusion so that others reveal theirs. Mystery, when held with integrity, does not distort the truth. It protects it. It gives you time. It gives you space. It gives you insight. And in many cases, it gives you control, not through domination, but through stillness, through restraint, through the ancient power of being unreadable. Because when others don't know what you mean, they become hyper-attuned to every word, every glance, every silence. And that attention is influence. There's a misconception in modern culture that vulnerability is always strength. That if you simply open your heart, expose your pain, and strip away the armor, you will earn the trust and admiration of those around you. But Machiavelli, ever the realist, would ask, what exactly are you handing them when you do this? And are they strong enough to hold it? It's not that vulnerability is wrong, it's that unfiltered vulnerability is reckless, especially in a world where most people are not listening to understand, but listening to assess, to weigh, to judge. Machiavelli understood that power and perception are inseparable, and what you reveal, you no longer control. So if you are going to show your wounds, you must choose when, how, and why. You must make your weakness work for you rather than against you. This is where we enter the realm of calculated vulnerability, a kind of emotional aikido where you use openness not to seek validation, but to disarm, not to be seen, but to strategically shape the lens through which you are viewed. History gives us examples of this. Marcus Aurelius, writing openly about his doubts, did not diminish his authority, he deepened it. Abraham Lincoln, often self-deprecating, used humor to show humility without ever relinquishing control. Even Machiavelli himself, in his exile, wrote with pain and longing, but shaped every phrase to maintain a precise image of a man still in command of his mind. They were not pretending to be flawless, but they also never allowed their vulnerability to reduce their command. They showed just enough, and always in ways that deepened their presence rather than diluted it. Here's the distinction. Vulnerability that seeks connection is powerful. Vulnerability that seeks approval is dangerous. The first invites trust. The second bleeds authority. If you make your wounds your identity, you will be seen as fragile. If you make your scars your lesson, you will be seen as strong. And if you can speak your weakness without asking for anything in return, not even understanding, then you have reached a form of power most never touch. To be clear, this is not about creating an illusion of invulnerability. That too is a trap. The perfectly polished figure becomes a target of envy. The one who reveals no doubt becomes too easy to despise. But the one who reveals selectively, who offers imperfection as a gift rather than a plea, becomes magnetic. You can lead with strength. You can teach with openness. You can connect through pain. But if you hand your entire emotional reality to people who haven't earned the right to carry it, you are not being vulnerable. You are abandoning yourself. And abandonment is not intimacy. It's exposure without purpose. It's performance without power. So be vulnerable, but make it an offering, not a leak. Share your truth, not your need. Reveal your lessons, not your bleeding. Because when you do this well, your weakness does not make you smaller. It makes you more complete. It allows others to see your depth without assuming your submission. And that balance between openness and restraint is what makes people lean in rather than look down. We live in an age that worships openness. Share your truth. Tell your story. Be raw. Be real. Be seen. But what no one tells you is this: the more you reveal, the less you retain. And while the algorithm might reward vulnerability, the deeper reality is far more brutal. Overexposure weakens you, not because people are cruel, but because human nature is wired to lose reverence for what it sees too much of. Machiavelli would not have survived in this age of compulsive disclosure, but he would have understood it instantly. He would have seen it for what it is, a system designed to extract power in exchange for visibility. You offer your interior world. They offer fleeting validation. And by the time you realize the exchange was uneven, your sovereignty is already gone. Because the moment you're too legible, you stop being taken seriously. People begin categorizing you, reducing you, fitting you into neat boxes of personality types, mental health hashtags, and social roles. You become familiar. And familiarity, in the wrong context, breeds not connection, but dismissal. When Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must be both loved and feared, he was pointing to the delicate balance between accessibility and distance. To be loved is not to be exposed. To be feared is not to be hidden. It is to be ungraspable, known enough to inspire loyalty, but not so transparent that you can be dismissed without hesitation. And yet today, people strip themselves bare for strangers, mistaking attention for intimacy and likes for loyalty. They believe that to be seen fully is to be validated, but often it is to be used. The truth is, if you give too much of yourself away, your thoughts, your emotions, your pain, you lose the internal gravity that keeps others orbiting. They come closer, yes, but with less care, less reverence. And when people stop treating your inner life with reverence, they start treating it as content, or worse, as ammunition. There is a sacredness to privacy, not secrecy, but privacy. It is the internal sanctuary that allows you to return to yourself without an audience, without opinion, without noise. This isn't about being dishonest or guarded. It's about choosing your exposure with precision. Not everyone should know your process. Not everyone should be invited into your past. Not everyone should have access to the shifting currents of your present self. Because the more you explain, the more they assume. The more they assume, the less they ask. The less they ask, the more they act from ignorance. And the more you will find yourself correcting a story that you never should have told them in the first place. Machiavelli knew this. What is private is powerful, not because it is hidden, but because it is yours. And in a world that urges you to speak before you think, to share before you understand, and to be vulnerable before you've even built stability, it becomes an act of power to remain sovereign. So keep your clarity, but not all of it. Keep your truth, but share it wisely, because not everything real needs to be revealed, and not everything revealed will be respected. The most dangerous thing you can do, in a world desperate to categorize you, is to resist definition. We are taught from a young age to find ourselves, to define who we are, to make it clear, communicable, consistent. But what if that instinct for definition is precisely what limits you? What if every role you accept is a room you eventually outgrow? Machiavelli never spoke of the soul in Jungian terms, but he understood the same instinct, that to remain powerful, you must remain in motion. Not aimless motion, but inner complexity, the refusal to collapse into a singular, predictable identity. In Jungian psychology, the self is not something fixed. It is a totality, a union of opposites, a convergence of shadow and light, instinct and image, the known and the hidden. And the path to becoming oneself, truly oneself, is not to declare it, but to live through it. to explore the multiplicity of being without shrinking it to appease the expectations of others. The person who too quickly defines themselves, I am this kind of man, I am this kind of woman, I believe this, I never do that, may feel strong for a time. But over time, that identity becomes a prison, a mask with no flexibility, a public image that must be maintained even when it no longer fits. And that's where authenticity dies, not from dishonesty, but from rigidity. Machiavelli understood that those who cannot shift are the first to fall, that those who cling too tightly to how they are seen lose their ability to adapt. He would have said, in modern language, if you let the world name you too soon, it will also decide when you are no longer needed. So the solution is not to be vague, nor to be evasive. The solution is to remain in what the ancients called liminal space, the threshold between roles, between definitions, between stories, the place where transformation is still possible, the place where others cannot fully hold you, and so they are forced to respond with attention, not assumption. This doesn't mean being formless, it means being vast. It means letting your identity stretch beyond a single trait, profession, aesthetic, or ideology. It means knowing yourself deeply, but never finishing the sentence. It means protecting the mystery within you, not because it is false, but because it is still unfolding. There is great strength in being a little unknown, even to yourself, because those who are overly defined are easily dismissed, easily replaced, easily controlled. But those who remain open, emotionally grounded yet hard to place, are harder to move, harder to manipulate, and far harder to forget. In myth, the most powerful characters are not the ones with the clearest labels. They are the ones who carry many archetypes at once. The warrior who knows when to become a poet. The king who remembers the exile he once was. The woman who can mother, destroy, create, and lead, all within the same gaze. To remain liminal is to remain whole, not hidden, but untamed, not confusing, but unconquered. And in a world obsessed with legibility, there is no greater form of power than to let them search for the words to define you, and never quite succeed. Most people believe that intimacy is the product of full disclosure, that the more you share, the more they'll love you, that the closer they get, the deeper the connection. But anyone who has loved, truly loved, knows this isn't always true, because closeness without tension becomes comfort, and comfort, when unchecked, becomes complacency. Machiavelli wasn't writing about romantic love, but his philosophy cuts deeply into its structure. He knew that the moment something becomes too familiar, it loses its edge. The moment someone believes they've mapped you completely, they stop reaching for you, they stop asking, they stop feeling the need to earn you, and that's when love begins to starve, not from absence, but from overexposure. In romance, mystery is not deception. It is the sacred distance that allows polarity to exist. Without it, the gravity collapses. There is nothing to lean into, nothing to wonder about, nothing left to awaken. We forget this because we confuse secrecy with withholding. We think mystery is dangerous. But true mystery in relationships isn't about hiding your heart. It's about keeping one part of it sovereign. It's the part you return to when everything else becomes tangled. It's the quiet place inside you that belongs to no one, not even the one you love. When that place disappears, when you've given every thought, every wound, every flicker of emotion to another, what remains is not intimacy, it's fusion. And fusion, though it feels like closeness, often ends in collapse. Because when two people lose their edges, they lose their magnetism. The most powerful relationships are not those where everything is known. They are those where something is always just out of reach. A look that doesn't need explanation, a silence that doesn't demand apology, a presence that says, I love you, but I still belong to myself. This is what Machiavellian wisdom reminds us, that even in love, you must protect your center. You must keep one room in your soul locked, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Because that mystery, when held well, doesn't push love away, it deepens it. It gives your partner something to lean into, something to respect, something to grow alongside. And when they know that there is still more to discover in you, they don't drift, they return. So don't collapse yourself in the name of closeness. Don't hand over your wholeness as a peace offering. Let them earn your depth, slowly, endlessly, because mystery isn't what keeps people out, it's what keeps them coming back. There's a strange truth buried deep in human nature, one that Machiavelli saw clearly, and most people learn only through pain. When you appear too perfect, they don't worship you, they wait for you to fall. You might think your brilliance will protect you, your calm, your control, your mastery. You might believe that if you speak well, dress well, act well, and move with quiet certainty, people will admire you for it. And for a time, they will. But admiration is a fragile thing. It slowly turns to comparison, comparison into insecurity, and insecurity into quiet resentment. Because when your presence makes others feel smaller, they don't ask for your secrets, they look for your cracks. And if they can't find one, they'll invent one. This is why the high achiever is often betrayed, why the brilliant are mocked, why the beautiful are hated, not because they've done wrong, but because they remind others of what they are not. Machiavelli never once suggested that greatness should be denied, but he did warn against appearing flawless. Because in a political world, and every social environment is political, flawlessness creates threat, and threat invites sabotage. The solution is not to become mediocre, it's to design your flaws, show imperfection, but make it harmless. Let them laugh at something inconsequential. Let them point out a misstep that doesn't compromise your foundation. Give them a story to hold so they don't go digging for the real ones. Because if you don't offer your humanity, they'll begin searching for your weakness. And when people feel like they've exposed you, they gain power. Not real power, but perceived superiority. A little moment of elevation, that's all most people need to feel safe in your presence. Let them have it. Let them believe they know something about you. Let them think they've seen the man behind the curtain, all while you move undisturbed, because the real curtain was behind them the entire time. This isn't about manipulation. It's about tension. It's about maintaining the right distance between reverence and relatability. Too distant, and they feel excluded. Too polished, and they feel inferior. But just flawed enough, just reachable enough, and they stay engaged without feeling the need to tear you down. Machiavelli understood this. It is not power that gets you killed. It's unchecked admiration, because admiration without imperfection becomes unbearable, not to you, but to those who are not yet whole. So give them something imperfect to see, not to dim your light, but to protect it. Because in a world that cannot sit beside brilliance without envy, the most brilliant must learn how to soften their glow without ever turning it off. Most people try to earn respect by being understood. They explain themselves, they over-communicate, they make their intentions clear, their reasoning visible, their boundaries obvious. But the harder you try to be understood, the more you shrink your presence. Because once people feel like they know everything about you, they stop listening, they stop considering you, they stop weighing your words, because they believe they've already grasped your substance. And yet, when someone walks into a room and you can't quite place them, not because they're hiding, but because they're not performing, something in you pauses. You speak more carefully, you observe more intently, you feel their presence, not as familiarity, but as weight. That is the power of ambiguity. It doesn't repel people. It forces them to slow down, to pay attention, to think twice before assuming your intent or measuring your limits. And that slight hesitation, that small delay in their confidence, is where your influence begins. Machiavelli, in his own way, knew this intimately. He advised princes to be many things: strategic, flexible, commanding, but above all, to remain difficult to read. Because when a leader becomes predictable, they become vulnerable. And when a man is fully known, he is fully mapped, and what is mapped can be navigated, resisted, or replaced. This principle doesn't just apply to leadership, it applies to every human dynamic where power is present, which is to say, all of them. In negotiation, the one who reveals their hand too early loses leverage. In romance, the one who becomes too emotionally transparent too quickly often becomes emotionally expendable. In friendship even, the one who offers endless access often finds themselves undervalued. But the one who maintains presence without explanation, who speaks carefully, who moves deliberately, who keeps part of themselves behind a closed door, becomes hard to ignore. Not because they are elusive, but because they are anchored. They don't chase respect, they elicit it. Their ambiguity isn't confusing, it's composed, and that composure sends a message. I am not here to be figured out. I am here to be felt. This is not about arrogance. It's about energetic restraint. It's about withholding the impulse to justify yourself, even when misunderstood, especially when misunderstood. Because the moment you stop correcting people's perceptions of you, you start shifting them. Silently, strategically, with presence alone. That's how ambiguity creates gravity. That's how mystery becomes magnetic. And that's how power becomes quiet, but unmistakable. Let's not be naive about this. To be unreadable comes with a cost. People will misunderstand you. They will project onto you, label you, resent you. They will call you aloof, cold, arrogant, distant. They will tell stories about your silence, invent meanings in your restraint, and mistake your sovereignty for superiority. This is the tax of ambiguity, because most people are uncomfortable around what they cannot define, and the world, craving speed, comfort, and certainty, will always favor the ones who explain themselves first. But Machiavelli would tell you that discomfort is your advantage, because when people misunderstand you, they are forced to look inward to interpret you, and while they're looking inward, guessing, adjusting, reacting, you remain still and unmovable, still and clear, still and free. You don't owe the world your total accessibility. You don't owe strangers your interiority. You don't owe even those who love you the abandonment of your complexity in exchange for their comfort. You are not here to be legible to everyone. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to be true, even if that truth never fully resolves in the eyes of others. And here's what no one tells you. In time, they stop resenting your mystery and start respecting it, because it reveals something they've lost: a center, a boundary, a code, a presence that is not shaped by the environment it moves through. They may never say it aloud, but they will carry it in how they speak to you, in how they shift when you enter the room, in how they hesitate before assuming too much. That hesitation is your perimeter, that mystery is your signal, and that misunderstanding is your protection. In a world obsessed with being seen, Machiavelli teaches us the rare power of being unknown, not invisible, not dishonest, but sovereign. To move without being defined, to be clear in purpose but quiet in method, to let others talk while you listen, to let others assume while you observe, to let others perform while you hold. Because power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it withholds, and sometimes it says nothing at all. Let them misunderstand you. You are not here to be explained. You are here to be felt. And what is felt, but never fully seen, is never easily forgotten.